Hey darlings. It's been about 5 minutes since the customer canceled the meeting, but Nastya was still standing near the elite new buildings, looking into the status facade, and herself reproached herself for not calling in advance to clarify the time. She was walking from foot to foot, hypnotized by the closed gates, and already now she assumed that it would be difficult to work with Mark Nikolaevich. Where are missing? After whispering her favorite proverb with one lip, she filled the ear with a broken strand of hair. She called her boss, explained the situation. There was no point in returning to work. She drove the car to the car service in the morning, and on the bus you will have to drive for a very long time. Having received the boss's approval, she called a taxi and, with a feeling of unfulfilled debt, went home. As soon as Nastya stepped over the threshold of the apartment, she heard the laughable voice of her young man. She stopped in the hallway, quietly closed the door. There was a door exit in the kitchen. Igor was so involved in the phone conversation that he did not hear how Nastya entered the apartment. That's why I don't want to get married. I'm not so bad. What about Nastya? Shuts up. Doesn't get her brain out. Igor laughed loudly, and Nastya had a cold running through her body. What a bastard. They lived together for the 4th year. Parents, friends, acquaintances, even neighbors, laugh at her openly. And she, like that fool, hopes every day that Igor is waiting for the right moment to make everything beautiful and schedule events for some important date. And he turns out not to do this. Well, right? Why? You are washed, ironed, fed like a pig on the kill. At the same time, he has no obligations. Not bad. Boiling fire. It's almost a day after the pies with fillings, pancakes, and ladushki to tea. I'm at work like cheese and butter. I feel our journey with her did not go in vain. You will cover me if anything before Nastya. I feel like I will only appear at home in the morning. I will have to work out the pies in full program. I heard a laugh again, from which Nastya almost got sick. Not in the strength to listen to his collaborator, loudly slammed the door. Igor immediately said goodbye to his friend and went out into the corridor. And why are you so early home? I kissed her cheek, carefully took the bag out of my hand, helped remove the coat, and I said to Vazhya, he invited me to his birthday party tomorrow. I was outraged, of course, that only I was alone, but he decided to celebrate his birthday without his wife. Who am I to dictate my conditions to him? Will you let me go? He asked mercilessly, as if a lot of things really depended on her permission. Of course, go. Can you miss your friend's birthday? Nastya was surprised by her coldness. It is unknown where the forces came from and how to respond and behave as if nothing had happened. The outside reacted calmly, and the inside was so tornadoous that it seemed a little more, and she would not be able to cope with herself. Please have dinner without me. In the refrigerator, vegetable stew, salad made from cabbage. You will warm everything up yourself. My head is sore. The wheezy spoke, smiling at her guilt. She could not stay in the narrow corridor any longer. The air began to lack sharply. Not paying attention to the surprised face of Igor, she turned around, hurriedly walked into the hall and lay on the couch. In her head, the plan was blinding, pretending to be sick, spend the night on the couch, calmly think it over, and by morning take the final decision. While Igor was in the kitchen and enjoyed eating everything that remained from yesterday's dinner, Nastya wrote a message to her friend. I urgently need to rent an apartment. I'll even agree to a room, preferably close to the office. The answer came almost immediately. Did you have a fight with Igor? Worse. I want to break up with him. True, he doesn't know about it yet. I'm preparing a surprise for him. I think he will appreciate it, and maybe even be happy. All details in a personal meeting. Did you say that your neighbor works as a realtor? I need it urgently, preferably today. Well, at least tomorrow. After sending a message, Nastya smiled. How many more useless words could she hear today in her address? If she didn't get sick and she didn't slam the door loudly, maybe she would even find out about the plans of her collaborator to break up with her in the near future, and instead of her, settle in Varia, so that her own cooking pies would always lie in the kitchen in the vase. Right, Mom? She was always sawing her. I tried to open my eyes and look at the situation from the outside. I always noted that if a civil husband, after a year, maximum after a year and a half, did not make an official proposal, then he will never do it again. You either have to leave or make up and forget about marriage. If you haven't changed your mind yet, then come to me. It's a burden to shoot 1 video and 2 videos. We'll live together for a while. If it gets hard, then we'll rent you a separate apartment. After reading from Laura, Nastya's message was relieved. She breathed and almost wept. She would have stayed up all night, and in the morning, as if nothing had happened, she would have sent her co-workers to work. She didn't want to go down to find out the relationship. Tomorrow she will take a day off, calmly pack her things, and take them to Larissa. She will write a note to Igor, and, on this optimistic note, she will put a hard point. Are you going to sleep? Igor sat on the couch, carefully touched his forehead with his hand. He stretched out his hands to lift and carry her to the bedroom, but Nastya, shaking her head, stammered and spoke. Igor, don't touch me. She covered her eyes. There was no strength to look at how she tried to please Igor. Nastya did not want to collect things with him. She mentally calmed herself down and begged to endure until tomorrow. In such a situation, you will definitely forget something, and she was not going to come back here anymore. Are you accidentally unmarried? Having put his hands in the pockets of his pants, he asked confusedly. No, my children will be born only in a legal marriage. Unexpectedly, she muttered. Usually she tried to bypass sharp corners and not hint at marriage one more time, but today she could not hold back. If Igor thinks that she wants to pressure him and push him to marry, then let him not worry, and with a calm conscience he goes to his Vari tomorrow for his birthday. She is not going to stop him from building new relationships. Let it be hard, painful, hurtful, what she spent so many years in vain. But she will not lose more time for a person who does not consider her in the role of her future wife. Why did scientists invent medicine for many diseases? From heart disease, they didn't come up with anything. It would be nice to take a pill for the night, and in the morning wake up with a bright head. Smile, calmly pack your things, and like an elixir erase the memories of a person who doesn't deserve to suffer because of him and think for a long time. And in the end, everything will turn out with accuracy, and vice versa. Because of this freak, you will have to hate everyone for a long time. Shake everyone's hands and only dream about clearing your life experience as soon as possible. Get rid of negative memories, because you won't be able to build anything new without it. Nastya went through the apartment again. She seems to have packed everything. Packed things in a bag. All the packages went to the entrance. The seller gave her 3 boxes, for which Nastya thanked her for 3 minutes. It remains to write a note and wait for a truck taxi. Take the car from the repair, give the keys to the neighbors, shake off and leave his apartment forever. Igor, I'm leaving. I don't want to interfere with you building relationships with Varia. Be happy. Don't look for me. We will never be together again. I don't need your apologies. I took all my things. You will take the keys from the neighbors. I hope you will not be afraid, and tonight you will thank Varenka for delicious pies. I will not congratulate her on her birthday, who I am. You can handle this mission yourself. Goodbye. Nastya read the note again, put it on the kitchen table. Seeing that the loaders took out the last box from the apartment, and with a sense of accomplishment closed the door on the other side. Parking the car near the office and seeing Igor, Larissa smiled cruelly. It was not in vain that Nastya spent so much time on him. Apparently, she studied the character of her neighbor well. Just in case, she asked the boss not to lose her in the morning. She warned that after lunch she would meet the customer again. Then she will work all night at home, and tomorrow morning the first sketches will lie on the chef's table. She thought the chef would be dissatisfied, but to her surprise, he responded to the request calmly and allowed her not to come to work in the morning again. Hello. Laura, with a smile, looked at the worn-out look of Igor. It seemed that he had recently jumped out of the bed in the air, went home for a minute to change his clothes, but having read the note, he forgot to take a shower, got into the car, and rushed to the office. If you are waiting for Nastya, then you cannot waste your precious time in vain. The boss sent her on an indefinite time on a business trip. At the request of a friend, Laura lied. Igor pretended to be thinking. Covering his eyes, he began to think of something with a smile. Then he turned around, took a few steps, and abruptly stopped. You don't know where she is? I was at my parents' place this morning. She's not there. But she doesn't answer the phone. What's going on after all? Does Nastya really not understand that before we left, we had to talk? He said boldly. Lori seemed to have heard the creak of his teeth and barely managed to contain her laughing. What to talk about? About the accident with which you were on a business trip. You sleep with her in the same bed. You burst pies with pleasure. And then, as if nothing had happened, you return to Nastya. If you like to sleep with two people at the same time, then I can disappoint you and pass Nastya's opinion. For her, this is unacceptable. Therefore, she left without explaining the reasons. Seeing that Igor wants to say something in response, Larissa raised her hands. I gave you her words. Nastya assumed that after a stormy night, you would come to the office. She herself doesn't want to see you or hear you, so she called the boss and asked for a business trip. I had to help my friends and take this mission on myself. I hope I explained everything to you in a profitable way. Larissa looked at Igor with a look and smiled again. And by the way, you have a mark on your collar from lipstick. Tell Varvara to be more careful next time. Lipstick is hard to wipe off. Larissa turned around and, without saying goodbye, she went to the office. Before her eyes, everything was floating. Igor went to work and prayed not to get into a car accident. The most correct solution in the situation was to stay at home, but Igor could not be alone in the apartment. It was unbearable and terribly offensive to look at empty Nastya's cabinets that she did not even dare to talk. As soon as I entered the office, I still did not believe that I could get to work without an accident. I immediately saw Varya. Hello. I briefly ignored the fact that they had not seen each other since last night. She immediately showed a happy smile on her face, and Igor tried to convey with his own eyes that tonight and all the rest did not mean anything to him. Varya also did not want to publish their relationship earlier. Everything has its time. When they file a complaint to the registry office, then no one will need to hide anything. She is not his stupid Nastya. It will not wait 3 years. It is only worth wanting, and the fire will not go anywhere. For such a groom you need to fight. With an apartment, with decent work, not married, the landlady does not count. If he loved her, he would have made a proposal a long time ago, but did not carry on someone else's bed. How are you? Nastya did not scold for not staying at home. Quietly whispered. They exchanged short glances. In front of the stage, followed by her words, tense silence, Varvara wrote on confusion and unwillingness to show her personal life. Let's go out. Igor spoke in a scattered manner, heading out. Nastya knows everything. It was worth it to just go into the rest room. He spoke with one breath, shaking his head. Varya's face showed a happy smile and a sudden interest. Where from? I didn't say anything to anyone. I clarified by making a nervous face, and, to confirm my words, I was surprised by the shoulder. I don't know. We need to stop meeting. I thoughtfully rubbed my hand and forehead. Varvara was not sure, and for some reason looked around. Igor quietly shook his head and went to the office. The accident followed. And how am I? It always seemed to me that you were not indifferent to me. Igor stopped. Varya, as if in one part, turned into a girl he didn't want to see anymore. What did she think of herself? Think about it. They slept over several times. He was ready to go to the boss's office right now and ask him to be transferred to another department. If not for a headache, he would have done it. But he still decided to postpone this question until tomorrow. It seemed to you. I love Nastya and I don't want to lose her. I've been wanting to tell you that I hate flour. I'm already sick of your pies. And I want you to know that I intend to make a proposal to Nastya in the near future and finally legalize our relationship. I deliberately offended and left Varvara with a salt pole in the corridor, and I quickly went into the office. Anastasia Vladimirovna, hello? We finally met. Seeing her flustered face, Mark smiled. Well, let's go look at the apartment and determine the front of work, he said, trying to behave modestly and not forced. Although in fact, he was ready to grab it and never let it out again. Mark, I will work with you? Amazing. I never thought I would design your apartment. Let's go. Mark carefully took her under his elbow, and they walked past the concierge together. He led her to the elevator, pressed the TH floor. Feeling like she was not in her plate, Nastya tried not to look at the elevator at the strict face of her former friend. She went away. How many years have they not seen each other? Immediately after the institute, he left for abroad. Almost immediately after his departure, she moved to Igor and heard nothing about him anymore. And here is my apartment. Mark opened the door. Nastya immediately began to express her thoughts. She presented the apartment in a classic style. The colors are only light, warm, necessary for the decoration of the shades of green and brown. There should be a lot of lighting. The lamps are the most diverse. The coupe cabinet can be done. You do it for yourself. And Nastya felt her cheeks burn from embarrassment. What does it mean for yourself? Mark, this is not serious. If you don't care and you don't want to deal with your apartment because of your burden, then maybe we will agree to all the questions with your wife. I don't have extra millions to pay you back later. I don't have a wife, and I didn't have one. Mark interrupted her again. I asked your boss to give the project to you. Because he took a break, he had a hard time breathing, because I completely trust you. Igor was sitting in the car near Larissa's house, looking into the faces of the passers-by, and was absolutely sure that Nastya's girlfriend would be able to answer all his questions. He couldn't even think that Nastya could do such a cold-blooded thing to him. I walked around the apartment on the tiles, tried not to make noise, so as not to wake up and not to burst into another dissatisfaction. I went to the kitchen to drink water, and when I read the note, I wanted to drink. But yesterday evening, I had anxiety in my head. I felt that something wrong was happening to her. For the first time in their entire life, having. In the morning, she tried not to look into her eyes, did everything automatically, as if she wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. He remembered how he reminded her of Vazhya's day in the morning, and she, with a long smile, wished him to have a good time. Yes, Nastya's strength, spirit, and endurance can only be envied. Well, nothing. Igor pulled out a blue box from his pocket. Once again he looked at the ring. It was a pity to part with your idyllic life, but you can't do anything. It's your fault. There is no other way out. Once again I looked at Larissa's windows. Where the hell is she wearing it? Let him just try to make noodles for him again about an emergency trip. This morning he swallowed this story. Now she won't get this number. She won't leave until she finds out the address of her future wife. What was his surprise when Igor saw Nastya's car coming to the house? Well, good luck. The beast is running on the catch. Igor jumped out of the car. Nastya, wait. Seeing her surprised face, he added, You don't think we still need to talk? He came closer. The seventh feeling immediately sent an impulse to the brain that the conversation would not come out, but still decided to try luck. Speak. I'm listening to you carefully, just quickly. She closed her eyes, nodded her head, as if she was really in a hurry, but still did her duty and spent a few minutes. "Forgive me." For a while they were silent. Igor was in such an ambiguous situation for the first time and did not understand what to say. "Did you move to Larissa?" "Yes." "What's the difference?" "Him, she still won't come back." Igor got out of pocket ring. "Come out for me." Such an outcome of the event Nastya did not expect, and Sherashina looked at the ring and could not believe that Igor finally decided to part with his freedom. "You remembered late." She made a frantic sigh and continued, "Give this ring to the one who spent the night today. I waited for you for a long time." These words, but they sounded, unfortunately, too late. She stretched out her hand, closed the box, and smiled wryly. "If I saw her now, my mother would be very surprised and would not believe that she could refuse the offer she had been waiting for so many years. I bought this ring for you." I put the box in her pocket. "Take it, or I'll throw it away. There is no more Varya in my life. Come back home. We play a fun wedding." Nastya looked at Igor with displeased eyes. She took out the ring from her pocket. Igor stepped away from her for a few steps so that she could not return the gift. She smiled and put the box on the bench. "I do not accept such expensive gifts from strangers." She opened the door until he stopped her again, hid in the entrance. Nastya went home, undressed, washed her hands, looked out the window. Igor's car was still there. Apparently, the former tenant was in no hurry today. For some reason, I wanted him to leave earlier and not blink. The thoughts of Marky flashed in my head. After she looked at the apartment, he invited her to a restaurant. They recalled their studies at the university, laughed a lot, and then he said in an open text that now she would not go anywhere from him. Nastya pretended not to pay attention to his words, and now he did not come out of his head, and she was constantly thinking about Mark. She could not understand what was going on in her soul. Everything fell into disarray. First the move, then an unexpected meeting with an old friend, a long-awaited ring from Igor, which, now it turned out to be completely wrong. Then it's okay, everything at once. Igor was particularly amazed by his actions. Nastya laughed out loud, but then threw all her thoughts aside and got to work. Igor has been sitting in the car for more than an hour and looking at Nastya's windows. I didn't want to go home at all. He got used to the fact that in the evening she was always waiting for him, that now he could not imagine his life any other way. He could only take his eyes off the windows when he rang the phone. At first he wanted to answer it. The mood was disgusting. He didn't want to talk to anyone. But seeing Vazhya's photo, he decided to talk to his friend. "Yes, hello." He didn't want to tell anyone that Nastya left him. As he was walking down the street, Nastya didn't know anything. Igor had a hard time breathing, but he didn't say anything. Well, how can I say? Of course, she was offended. There was silence in the phone. Igor already wanted to say goodbye and dropped the challenge. He understood that Vazhya was waiting for details, but he was not going to devote his friend to something he himself could not believe. "And you know that Nikitin has returned from abroad. This is the first time I hear about it." "Well, he came back and came back. What difference does it make?" Igor was unhappy. "I just saw him today with Nastya. They had dinner at the restaurant." Mark looked at her like that. "I wanted to come to them, but I didn't dare to break the idol. I thought there was a fire between them." Vazhya again shut up and snorted with his nose. Una waited answer, coughed, and continued. "Watch so that it doesn't work out that you're still with Varya. You didn't get Nastya out of the nose." "Thanks for the warning." Igor pressed the red button. He looked around. Larissa's car was not in the yard. So Nastya is alone in the apartment. Well, that's good. They don't need any extra witnesses. Igor closed the car, called the next apartment. To his surprise, the door was opened without any extra questions. It seemed like a good sign to him. He walked up to the third floor. "You?" Nastya was unhappy. Her eyes were open. "I thought Laura had come." Igor pushed her aside, went into the apartment, and closed the door. "Do you know what I thought?" "Taking off the jacket?" I asked. What? That we should think about the children. I quickly grabbed her by the hand and took her to the room. Nastya was upset. Then she tried to push Igor away and free herself from his clenched hands. He held her tight. Nastya clung to his hair and began to pull hard. After wriggling her face, Igor put her on the couch and fell on top. The birdie got caught. He began to cover her face with kisses, but instead of making up, Nastya began to scream loudly, "Help me!" With one hand, Igor held her tightly over his head, and with the other, he closed his mouth. "Now you will scream at me with pleasure," whispered in her ear. They began to ring the doorbell, to knock persistently. Nastya even thought that someone started to kick her and shout to open her immediately. Igor let her go, stroked her hair with his hand, and went to open it. Nastya, pulling her knees to her chin, hugged them. No matter who came there, she was immensely grateful to this person. But when she raised her head and saw Mark's look, darkened by anger, she was only able to open her mouth and open her eyes in surprise. He was not able to speak out loud. Seeing her confident nod, he turned to Igor. "Your happiness." He glimpsed through his teeth. Igor looked at Mark as if he were his blood enemy and barely held back so as not to throw himself at him with fists. "Where did this savior come from? You better tell me what you're doing here. And why are you spinning around next to my wife?" With a mockery, he said, looking at Nastya's surprised face. "Let's start with the fact that Nastya is not your wife, and, apparently, she will never have a wife." In the room for a few seconds, the ringing silence hung. Mark, not paying attention to Igor, sat next to Nastya, pressed her to himself. As if calming, he stroked his head. As I felt that I shouldn't have let you go alone today, went after you. I saw Igor grab you near the entrance, felt. It's good that I saw you in the window and knew on which floor you were. And when I heard your scream for help, I started to break into the door. Mark was taller than Igor and wider in shoulders. He spoke calmly, not paying attention to the riled-up face of the opponent. He showed his appearance that he was not afraid and ready to give a stand at any moment and stand up for the girl. "Nastya, maybe you can explain to me what this pigeon is doing here? I look at you and just humbly. It feels like you've lived with him for 3 years, not with me. Maybe that's why you ran away from me so quickly that you found a replacement long ago." Igor jumped on Mark, grabbed him by the chest, pulled on himself, trying to push him away from Nastya. He waved to hit, but Mark turned around and the fist flew past his face. And in the next moment, Igor was already lying on the floor. "Enough!" Nastya screamed. "Igor, go away." It wasn't enough for the neighbors to call the police. "Get out of here, and so that I never see you again. Think what you want. I'm not going to justify myself." Mark again hugged her shoulders. The swears were heard in his address. Igor got up, wanted to fight again, but, throwing them with a bad look, he smiled and changed his mind in the next second. He took out of his pocket a box with a ring, put it on the magazine table. "My offer remains in force. Before making the final decision, think well. Your defender also has a past, perhaps even cooler than mine." Nastya was silent. While Mark was around, you could relax and not be afraid of anything. "You can take the ring. Nastya, it will no longer be useful. I will buy her another one," Mark calmly said, and Nastya did not object. "Let her not think that there is no one to defend her." And even harder pressed on Mark. "I will be waiting for your call." Igor turned to Nastya. He looked down on Mark from head to toe and slowly went out. "Thank you." As soon as the door closed behind Igor, Nastya was released from Mark's strong embrace. No reason. His answer sounded somehow unnerving, as if he was afraid that she would start scolding him for self-righteousness, and really decided to finally part with him. Mark looked carefully at Nastya, waiting for an answer. A picture appeared before his eyes, as if near the entrance, she returned the ring to Igor. Sitting in the car, Mark watched them. He barely held back so as not to interfere and explain to the young man that his train had long gone, but still decided to leave the last word for Nastya. Mark, do not ask. What should I think of? This topic is closed once and for all. I already told you about it. His gaze immediately warmed up, and a happy smile appeared on his face. That's great. Now, my hands are untied, and from this minute on, I'm starting to take care of you. Igor wandered around the apartment all night and kicked everything that caught his eye. Varya called several times, but he never answered. Tomorrow, from the very morning, he will go to the boss and ask him to transfer him to another department. He will not work with this boss anymore, and if the boss disagrees, he will resign. Earlier, everyone came to work. There was no desire to be alone at home. He sat down at his desk. First of all, he wrote a statement for transfer. Seeing Varya, who had been locked in the office, he sighed hard and, shaking his head, could only be unhappy to smile. He didn't even have time to object. Warned that he made a proposal to his beloved, gave her a ring. I'm pregnant. Varya tried to hold herself back confidently and calmly. However, she couldn't hold herself back, grabbed the stapler, began to turn it in her hands, and carefully watched his reaction. I will give birth, she confidently added. Igor's gaze first stopped on her pale face, then slowly went down to her chest, then lower. Gray skirt pencil tightly lay around while still flat stomach, and what do you suggest, and what can take and marry Nastya on the evil on the soul of such thoughts, immediately became sad and anxious, at least cry swallowed calm in the throat, remembering how she yesterday without any shyness hugged Mark. This picture butter still did not come out of my head. This is definitely my. She was in the hospital, buying a test, and when she saw 2 clear stripes, she cried all evening and did not know what to do with it. She remembered how half a day she rubbed herself on the ring that was lying on Igor's table, and with what pride he said that he finally decided to make his own nasty offer. He came up to her, hard to breathe, hugged her, pressed her breasts, kissed her and whispered, "Don't cry. I'm very glad I'll soon become a dad." And he almost really didn't cry because his life changed so cool. 6 months passed. Nastya looked at Mark with a smile, and he leaned over and, so that she would not be angry anymore, pressed against her lips and did not let go of her embrace until she stopped being angry at him and did not answer for a kiss. I'm leaving in just 2 days. Sunday evening I will be home. Then the business trip will not be long. In 2 weeks we will finally get married, and you, as my beloved and legal wife, will accompany me everywhere. Mark sweetly spoke to her. In the apartment where they did not go, the ringing silence hung. Mark almost every day reminded Nastya to finally part with his rented apartment and move things to their new apartments. After 2 weeks of marriage, and they still live separately, meet in the apartment on weekends, and no matter how Mark did not swear, Nastya constantly found a reason to postpone the upcoming transfer. Okay, persuaded, go on a business trip, but promise that you will miss. Mark opened the door. They went out. Everyone got into their car. I didn't want to leave a cozy apartment, but die of boredom 2 days without Mark. She was not going. After sending each other air kisses, blinking. Oh, Nastya, hello? I thought you wouldn't come to spend the night tonight. Seeing my friend at the door, Laura smiled. Mark is leaving for work on all weekends, so you'll have to put up with me a little longer. Laura shrugged, as if she were thinking about something, and on the face of Nastya, a happy smile floated. I was given 2 tripods for the tour base. I wanted to invite Nikolai, but she can't. Dad has a birthday. Well, maybe you'll join the company? The new tour base has recently opened. There is a pool, a sauna. Let's go. We'll be back on Sunday. Have a rest, clean the feathers before your wedding. Laura opened the closet, started packing. The bag flew the swimsuit, underwear, shorts, sports suit. Are you going or staying? Well, I'm going. How can I leave you alone? Nastya took out her sports bag from the closet and started putting the most necessary things in it. Maybe we'll go swimming in the pool, and then we'll warm up in the sauna? As soon as they settled in the room, Laura suggested which one to wear the bathrobe. I don't mind. Nastya's girlfriend supported. By the way, I forgot to tell you some fresh news about your ex. Laura breathed heavily, shook her head. As soon as Igor took a DNA test and was convinced that the child was really his, he immediately made a proposal to Varya. The wedding was played in a cafe. Her term was already decent, but the bride was happy. She jumped there as if she had started. She turned her leg on the dance floor and fell down. Right in the cafe, bleeding opened. She was taken straight to the hospital, but the child was not saved. And literally the other day they filed a divorce application. No matter how I treated Igor, I'm sorry they lost the child. Nastya was thinking. I looked at Laura, looked away, slowly digested the words of my friend. I took a deep breath to calm down. My heart was beating madly. Igor probably thinks that she cursed him, but God sees. In recent times, she didn't even remember him. Okay, let them figure it out themselves. Let's go swimming. We came to rest, and not to bother other people's problems, said Laura and began to change clothes. Class, it's good that you pulled me out. Nastya and Laura chose a free path, took positions, deciding to swim on the banks. Turning her head, Nastya straightened out and looked at the couple. Mark carefully held his satellite, and when she went down to the pool, she immediately pressed against Mark, hugged his shoulders and, not wanting to let go, jumped on his hands. Mark on his hands carried her to the depth. He had a good trip, she said, through her teeth. The mood immediately deteriorated. But what are you? Wherever you spit, you will definitely get into the bastards or into the scum, which the light did not see. Let's go say hello, Lori suggested, and immediately sailed to the happy couple. Mark, do you want to introduce me to your girlfriend? There were a lot of questions. They were torn apart. The offense was torn into small pieces. The heart was ready to jump out at any minute and look for a fifth corner in the pool. Nastya Shereshina looked at Mark and did not understand how she managed not to look around with such an unreliable and mean person. Mark rubbed his temples, looked at his girlfriend with a displeased look. Nastya, let's all get out of the water and talk calmly, which was recently ready to wear on his hands and not to part even in the depths. I am very interested in listening to you, but please don't take long. I still need to notify all the guests invited. Warn them that there will be no wedding. Lyra is my ex-girlfriend. She invited me to the Turbaz to say goodbye. I left her for your sake. She found out that we would soon get married and called me all week, asking to give her time. To talk, Mark began to justify himself, following Nastya. And so you settled in one room. Nastya suddenly stopped to look again into his shameless eyes. A tiny hope was in his soul that they still settled in different rooms. But seeing his confusion, she realized that they still have one room. What a scum you are. The devil pulled me to believe you. And you are almost better than Igor, maybe even 100 times worse. I can't stand such two-faced people. Nastya turned to his companion. Lyra and Larissa stood behind her back and didn't interfere in the conversation. Thank you, Lyra, for opening my eyes. There will be no wedding. As if God protects me and does not allow me to make a monstrous mistake. She turned around to leave, but Mark got on the road and blocked the road. Then she took off the ring she gave them, put it on Larina's palm. Take it away. I don't need it anymore. You can leave it to yourself. You can throw it away. I don't care. She pushed Mark away and quickly headed to the room. I didn't want to see anyone now. I just wanted to close in the room with Laura. Until no one sees, cry in the vest and start all over again from the very beginning. Nastya, I have a feeling that this is a pre-planned action, and the former Marka is counting with you. Closing the door in front of Marka's nose and asking him not to bother Nastya, Larissa expressed her opinion. He rushed to them in the room, but Nastya immediately warned that they would not be able to talk. They will definitely talk, but not today. I was surprised when I was given a free trip for 2 people. Our company was engaged in the design of the interior of this tour base, but I had no relationship with this work. I just know that many of our employees were given a tour. Why did I end up among the invited? For me, it remains a mystery. Laura talked loudly, looking at her upset girlfriend and not knowing how to approach her to calm down a little. Maybe you should talk? Nastya ran away first, and Mark justified himself in front of Larissa and assured that he had nothing with Lyra, although everything looked completely different from the outside. If he really told the truth, then you have to try very hard to make him believe. What about Larissa? Even if there was nothing between them, then everything would have happened at night. People rent a room for the night not to play chess, but they rented a room for 2 nights. The excuses in this case are simply inappropriate. I'm not going to start my family life with lies. Let Valeria hang noodles in her ears about Sunday business trips. And that's enough for me. I don't even want to listen to anything. Nastya took the phone in her hands, wiped her tears. She stood in front of Mark and his ex-girlfriend. Only when they were in the room, she was able to relax and shed tears. What are you doing? She wrote a post that the wedding would not take place. Let them clarify the reason for the death of Mark. Tears flowed back on Nastya's face. On the phone, endless calls and messages were coming. In her head, an opposing Hulk was giving way, which prevented her from focusing, gathering her strength and leaving home. Tears crushed her throat. Nastya unsuccessfully tried to throw a humiliating picture in the pool out of her head. But this couple continued to mingle in front of their eyes and enjoy her hysterics and helplessness. I want to go home, Nusava said to Nastya. You can stay, and I'll call a taxi and leave. If I came by my car, I would have left a long time ago. To be in the same territory with Mark and listen to his excuses, she was not going to. Now she wanted to close herself off from everyone, hide, and until Monday see no one. Don't even think. I won't let you go anywhere. Stop crying. Soon the whole pillow will be wet. Now you will calm down, then take a shower, get yourself in order, and we will go to the restaurant. Laura looked at the incoming messages and smiled. Mark wrote that he went home. He will be waiting for you in your apartment with him. She threw a heavy wave of thick black hair off her shoulder, sat next to Nastya, bowed her head, wiped her tears with her fingertips. So let her wait. Mark is sure that you will break down at home, and we will stay with you and have fun. Mark did not remember how he ended up in his room. He silently began to throw things in the bag. He put on jeans right on the wet swimming pool. He did not want to change clothes in front of Lyra. Why did he even agree to this stupid adventure? She called him all week and sent him texts. She reported that when she found out that he had started to meet with Nastya, she had a heart attack. She accused him of all mortal sins and constantly asked the same question. Did she deserve such an attitude that he didn't even dare to meet her and explain everything? Mark clenched his fingers on the carrier. The phone burst from the incoming. Having read Nastya's statement and status that there will be no wedding, friends just broke off the chain and called nonstop. Now prove that there were no cheats. Fool. He's to blame for everything. Well, as he felt that he would definitely get confused in the networks set by Lyra. And he had no doubt that she applied to all this story. Abandoned girl capable of many things. Knowing that they have one room with Lyra on 2, Mark asked to settle him separately, but he was told that there are no free places. I wanted to turn around and leave, but at the last moment I changed my mind. I decided that if I came, then he would rest. He bathes in the pool, they calmly talk with Lyra, and late in the evening he will leave. When Lyra jumped into the pool on his hand, he decided to teach her and throw her into the deep. He knew she was bad at swimming. When he heard Nastya's voice and then saw her flustered face, he realized that he was right for the trap. Nastya always liked it. Going abroad, Mark was sure that when she returned, she would be married, with a child in her hands. Also tired, with a gulch on the head, a flabby waist, but at the same time happy. And when he accidentally saw it, he disappeared again. He made a note. It turned out that he lives in a civil marriage. Igor walks around, is not going to get married. He decided that this was his chance. Maybe I should have stayed. If Nastya does not appear at home until Sunday, then he will just go crazy. After leaving, Mark once again became interested in free numbers, but he was rejected again. All that remained was to hope for a miracle and that Nastya will listen to him and find the strength to forgive him. I have a feeling that we want to work on our legal weekend. There are so many of our employees here. Laura quietly said, looking around. We are constantly greeting someone. And Nastya looked at one point, and it seemed like she didn't see anyone at all. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And if it weren't for Laura, I would never agree with such a shitty mood to go to a restaurant. Nastya was now completely out of the party. True, now, sitting at the table, for the first time in her life, she wanted to go to a pizza and forget about the nightmare that happened to her. Come on, your ex Mark is here too. She sits at the table alone and glances at herself. Laura reported, demonstratively looking at Valeria. She dressed up as if she were at a cocktail party. The bitch is beautiful, she added, deciding to shine with trauma. Nastya barely held back so as not to look back and not look at the girl who easily upset her wedding. But instead, she took a bottle in her hands and, pouring wine into the glasses, she threw up. Let's better drink. I'm tired of thinking about Mark, about his actions. We came to rest. Now we will do this. For us. Nastya's Hall dried up the glass, threw herself on the back of the chair. She smiled cruelly when slow music started playing. Oh, our boss is here too. Sitting not far from us, together with the castle. By the way, there are rumors that he also recently broke the engagement. Laura said with a smile. How do you know? Nastya made a couple of sips of wine, put the glass on the table. You say the chef is sitting not far from us. She got up from the chair. I'll go order a song and invite him to a lunch. Larissa grabbed her hand. Nastya, stop it. Tomorrow you will regret it. You'd better eat. Just eat, not eat. Nastya surprisingly raised her eyebrows. Don't stop me. I'm tired of being good. For everyone. Now let them watch and wonder what I can be when they will make me angry and bring me to the handle. She tried to break out of the grip, but Larissa did not let go. Laura, let go. I'll just warn the boss so that he doesn't give me more apartments of such scoundrels as Mark. Laura let go of her hand and Nastya, having taken the bag off the table and, not paying attention to the judging look of her friend, went to order a song. Again, a slow melody played. Nastya, passing by her table, put down her bag and, without any hesitation, in the presence of her colleagues, approached the boss. The wine did its job, and the whole situation. Nastya relaxed and stopped feeling sad. You can be invited to a dance. I stretched out my hand to him, without leaving a slightest chance to refuse. Sergei Alexandrovich, as soon as they came out to the middle of the hall, turned to the boss. Send me on a long trip, and somewhere far away. I met his surprised look and, sadly smiling, began to wait for an answer. Yes, no problem. We were just offered an object that is far from us. If we agree, we fly out on Monday evening. The boss looked at Nastya's hand and, without seeing the ring, shook his head. And her upcoming wedding was rung all over the office. And a happy smile has been falling from Anastasia's face lately. It was not difficult to guess that a black cat was running between the young people. Great, that's what you need. Thank you, Sergei Alexandrovich. I hope that you will not forget about our conversation tomorrow and do not rethink. I need this trip like air. Nastya swallowed a coma in her throat. From the fact that there was an opportunity to leave, a heavy load fell off her shoulders. I don't throw words into the wind. Look, you don't rethink. You'll make up with your fiancé, and before you leave you'll start looking for a reason to quit your job. While escorting her to her desk, the chef spoke in a short voice as if warning her that if she said, there's nothing to say. Well, and you were afraid. Our chef is just smart. We fly to work on Monday. Sitting on the chair, carefully pushed by the chef, she tried to calm Nastya's friend down and answer her silent stubbornness. Somewhere deep inside, the feeling of incomprehensible anxiety still moved, but she is not used to the unpleasantness. Once she has already experienced deep disappointment, will you survive the second? What is the sin of hiding? I wanted to be weak, hide behind the back of my beloved husband, give birth to children for him, but apparently to family life she was not ready again. Nastya, to relax, made another sip of wine. You are not in a hurry to the event? Laura carefully asked. The words of Mark that he had not cheated and that they saw do not correspond to reality have not come out of her head yet. She did not know why, but she believed him. I really wanted Nastya to listen to Mark's words a little, but it was difficult to persuade her friend. Nastya stood on her own. She was sure that Mark was not better than Igor in any way. Let's not talk about Mark anymore. There will be no wedding. I have already decided everything. I will better live alone than with a person I do not trust. I didn't want to go home at all. In the car, Nastya turned on the phone, ran, looked at the messages. Basically, they were from Mark and from guests invited to the wedding. Mark beat in the most painful places. Shamelessly pressed on painful points, asked not to get hot, remember how old she is, and before then to refuse the offer of the hand and heart to weigh everyone for and against coming to his rented apartment. Nastya immediately saw the car of the brand. He seemed to be a predator waited for his prey, and to slip past him unnoticed was not possible. Laura, do not leave me, please do not leave me with him alone. They had such a good rest at the Turbis. For some time, Nastya even forgot that Mark had deceived her and decided to devote her former day off to her. She tried to throw everything unnecessary out of her head, and from Monday, to sink her head into work. How do you imagine this? Opening the trunk, her friend answered. Mark has already taken up defense near Nastya's door and was looking forward to her coming out on the street when she will have time. Why did you come? Is it really not clear that I will never forgive you? Whatever you say, and whatever you justify, I will stay with my opinion. No one will convince me that you are not cheating on me. Nastya raised her head, looked into his eyes. To increase the distance, she stretched her hand forward, put her palm on his chest. From his gaze, thousands of goosebumps ran through the spine. But Nastya was not going to give up. She smiled as if nothing bad happened between them, and this situation even made her a little laugh. Don't worry, everything that is not done is for the best. Since you were so much pulled on the eve of Valeria's wedding, then this is your man. You just don't know about it yet. You will thank me when the time is over. Mark's pale face got even more pale. Nastya, as if nothing had happened, continued. Goodbye, Mark. Tomorrow I'm going on a business trip. I asked the boss to send me away from you, and for a long time. I don't want to see you anymore. I took the bag out of the trunk and, taking Larissa by the hand, quickly went to the entrance. Mark grabbed her elbow. Rolling his eyes, Nastya turned around, and he, without thinking for a long time, pulled her on himself. You will not go anywhere. I will not let you go on any business trip. Don't even hope. I took her bag, put Nastya on my shoulder, and, without paying attention to her screams, took her to my car. Laura tried to jump nearby, to object something, but no one listened to her. Let me go. Who did I tell? Nastya tried to resist, hit him on the shoulders, back, head. From the helplessness, grabbed the ear and began to twist it. Not paying attention to the pain, Mark opened the front door, carefully, so as not to hit, pushed on the front seat. Nastya, as she could, leaned back and tried to kick him with her foot. She screamed to Larissa to call the police. She threatened that he would be given a term for kidnapping a person. She will not leave it like that. Seeing that Nastya was not calm, Mark took out the handcuffs from her pocket and, so that she would not run away, fastened her to the handle. Turned to Lori, waved her hand. Just in case, warned her. Don't wait for Nastya today. We'll spend the night with her in our apartment. Don't worry, I won't do anything bad. Seeing that Nastya finally calmed down a little, carefully closed the door. He walked around the car, sat down. He suddenly touched his parking lot and left the yard. The car was ringing in silence. To make the situation more exciting, Mark turned on the music, turned his head, looked at her angry face, and then clearly, saying every word, said, "During the time that we were together, I never cheated on you. We will go to Leroy together and try to dig into the truth. I have nothing to hide. I repeat, I did not cheat on you and I was not going to do it. Try to believe me. I don't want to lose you." Mark, don't you realize that in love men don't do that on the eve of a wedding? Don't you realize that you humiliated me when you agreed to go with Valeria to the Turbaz? I'm not talking about lying and that you stopped in the same room. You changed your clothes. I wouldn't be surprised if you helped her to fasten the top from the bathrobe. And the way Valeria was hanging on you in the pool is not given any explanation at all. Nastya turned her arm. The handcuffs were small, but quite durable. Mark looked at her. Hand. Sorry, I had to take the toy from my nephew. My father bought him handcuffs in the children's world. Jaeger somehow fastened me to the battery. I had to bargain for a long time to free myself. The face of Mark remained indescribable, but during their short novel, Nastya perfectly studied his character and saw that in fact he was very worried. Stop this circus, free me and turn back. I still lack to dig in your dirty laundry with Valeria. I could talk to her on the Turbaz, but I thought it was below my dignity. So stop humiliating me and dragging me to my girls on the showdown. Nastya bowed to her kidnapper and barely held back so that she would not stick her hand on him. Don't swear. Of course I'll let you go. I just want you to listen to me. And because of my unthinkable outburst, I stopped screwing myself. Moreover, I have a weighty argument. There was nothing between us and it could not be. I love only you. And girls like Lyra have long been out of my taste. I tried to kiss Nastya, but she managed to push him away and turned his face away. Tears came up to her neck. They began to choke. Nastya felt a sharp nausea and dizzy. Unable to even untie the belt, she opened the door, opened her mouth, breathed deeply, leaned over and immediately pulled her out. Feeling a slight relief, she untied the belt and went out. She strolled to the car. Again, she felt a sharp urge to puke, but this time she carried it. She held back. She took out her wet wipes from her bag, wiped her face. We drank a lot of wine yesterday. I barely got up today. My head hurts so much, and you still climb here with your kisses. As soon as I imagined that you kissed your Valeria with your lips, I got sick of it. Speaking everything that was boiling in my soul, Nastya got into the car, opened the window. There was a bitter taste in her throat. She swallowed. Her face curled, threw herself on the back of the chair, and hardly breathed. Mark did not respond to her stubbornness. Nastya was offended and was 1,000 times right. He started the car. In 5 minutes he stopped near a small store. He bought a bottle of mineral water. Here, drink it. It will be easier. Nastya greedily took 2 sips. This was enough to feel much better. Thank you. Take me home. Mark thought about it. He saw that she was in a bad mood, but he didn't want to break up again. He understood that Nastya did not want to go on a date, but he still tried to reach out to her. Nastya, I understand. I'm to blame. You shouldn't have been deceived, and even more so, go somewhere. Mark carefully removed the wet strand from her face. Seeing that she did not react, I thought it was a good sign. I'll take you home. Just promise me that tomorrow you will not go on a business trip. Nastya blinked, demonstratively stood in the windshield. I can't promise anything, because I really want to be away from you, and not see you for as long as possible. She was in her thoughts with a sigh. Since the time she saw Mark in the embrace of Valeria, 2 days have passed. But during this time the pain did not dull. It became even stronger. From the memories, the heart was torn apart into small parts. Mark started the car, breaking the rules, turned around and in complete silence, took Nastya to her rented apartment. In the morning, Nastya stood near the boss's office and prayed to God that he would not forget his words. The secretary was not there yet. Nastya sat down on the chair and picked up the phone. Good morning, Anastasia. The boss looked at his watch. Hello, Sergei Alexandrovich. Did not rethink, but threw her with a look from head to toe. He was surprised, as if expecting that she would now begin to apologize and refuse from his words. No, Nastya seriously answered. Then go to the staff department, make a business trip. Then you can go home and collect the suitcase. I'll come for you at. The plane will not wait for us. Be ready. Whatever happens, the main thing is to leave, and there, it seems, the matter will be resolved. Everything is clear? Opening the door in his office, the boss asked. Yes, Sat. I will stand with my suitcase on the street and wait for you. Well done. I hope you won't change your mind at the last moment, and you won't let me down. He reminded me just in case and hid in his office. When she was on a business trip, Laura went outside with her. Nastya, who was parked near the car entrance, went out. She decided to go, offended by the words, looking at her suitcase. Mark, why did you come? We found out everything yesterday. She took a few steps back, still not trusting him and suspecting that he was up to something again. Just in case, she prepared to scream. But seeing the car with the cones, she breathed out easily. The boss came out of the car. He greeted everyone, grabbed Nastya's suitcase, put it in the trunk. Are you ready? You said goodbye to everyone. He turned to Nastya and turned his gaze at Mark's angry face. But let's get in the car. We still need to discuss some organizational moments along the way. He opened the back door. Nastya sat down. Mark put a bouquet on her knee that lay in the car. Thanks to him for the flowers, she quickly slammed the door. She waited for the boss to sit in the front seat, and only when the car went, turned around and waved everyone's hand. And then, unable to cope with herself, she closed her face with her palms and quietly cried. All the way to the airport, Nastya cried. She tried to do it quietly, not to attract the boss's attention, but noticed that Sergei Alexandrovich sometimes looked in the mirror, caught her gaze, but did not say anything. She was very grateful to him for this. Leaving the city, Nastya did not think that it would be so unbearably hard for her. In front of her eyes, there was a sad face of Mark. His farewell bouquet was lying on her knees. Her heart seemed to be jumping out. I felt that she was leaving not for a business trip, but running away from a specific person. My mood got even worse when they came to register the flight. The boss looked at her crying face carefully. You can stay. In the order of exception, I allow you not to go anywhere. I don't want you to regret your unthoughtful act later. If I wanted to stay, I would have voiced my decision in the ear for a long time. Everything is fine. Don't pay attention to me. Nastya looked aside, rolled up her suitcase to the rack, opened the bottle with mineral water, took a few sips and tried to smile so that he would not ask questions anymore. I took out my passport from my bag. The phone rang. Nastya smirked, looked at the screen. Mark called. The boss silently watched her, and Nastya was able to get together, turned off the sound and, but what does he need? Does he not understand that he hurts not only himself, but also her? Only calmed down, tried to show the boss that this call means nothing to her. She couldn't hold it, and her eyes were again in a wet place. She turned around, unwittingly wiped her eyes. She ordered herself not to be upset anymore, and when she turned around, the boss already left the suitcases on the scales. Well, that's all. With small steps, she moved away from Mark. Sergei Alexandrovich, they passed the waiting area, sat down in their free seats. As soon as they announced the landing, they took the landing and got in line. Nastya has long left, Larissa went home, and Mark still sat on the bench. Inside, everything was torn apart into small pieces from lack of use, and from the fact that he spoiled everything that he could and everything that was expensive. She still didn't believe that she could let Nastya go. When he was going with her, he wanted to use force again, but seeing her worried face, he realized that he had no right to stop her. He will only make it worse, although it's just not worse anymore. Because he is to blame for everything. Because the moron who decided to vent a little before the wedding, and at the same time repent before Lyra. Explain that you will not command the heart. Who knew that Nastya would be the most honorable spectator on this theatrical performance? Mark got into the car, left the parking lot without hurrying, and went to Valeria. He stood near the door for a long time, because no one was in a hurry to open the door. He called again. Finally, the door opened. Lyra barely in a lace-up dress, but in a small short dress in front of him. Did I accidentally dress like that? After throwing her eyebrows, Mark was surprised, looking at her outfit. She was getting ready for bed. Lyra answered coquettishly, closed the door to the lock, and invited him to the apartment. Mark sat on the couch, put his leg on his leg, and, in order not to spill from the empty to the floor, went to work. Tell me, why did you have to argue me with Nastya? Seeing her surprised eyes, he raised his hand and, without letting her say anything, continued. But don't say it's not your business. How did you want it? You thought everything would go away? You left me for no reason, found another one. And you, Lyra, how do you want it so and live? The child I lost, I will never forgive you. Not everyone is given after such a blow to stay kind. Lyra trembled, bit her lips to hold back her tears, but still choked with her nose. Only God knows how she survived the loss of the child. While Mark was having fun with his Nastya, she was getting emotional wounds, and then could not return to normal life for a long time. I see. So she was upset with me. And when she found out that I made Nastya a proposal, she decided to play the show. I dare to say that you did a good job. The main thing is that it is true and effective. Nastya left me. Lyra smiled, wiped away the tears that had fallen. She opened the window as if she lacked air. She turned around abruptly. No one forced you to the turbis. I suggested you not to refuse, although I could not go. I just showed Nastya your true face. Mark, to calm down, counted to 5. Do not ever appear on my path again. Yelya squeezed herself out. He headed to the front door. He stopped when Valeria grabbed him by the hand. Because of some crazy girl, you are ready to overwrite everything that was between us. She clapped her fingers in front of his face. You will come back to me. You will see. You will beg me to forgive you. Because your Nastya made a pause, squinted her eyes. Do you think she was worried when you left the turbaz? Damn it. Your fiancé on the Palacia hugged the boss. Had fun. Ordered songs for him. Lyra led her to the side of the hand. Sorry, I didn't track them down. They spent the night together or separately. Mark didn't listen to her anymore. Opened the door and jumped into the corridor. While he was going down, Lyra's words were constantly in her ears that Nastya was flirting with a man all evening, with whom she went on a business trip. The chef got cold, felt unimportant, and, leaving her alone, went to the hotel. An hour later, he called to ask her to buy him a throat spray. To get rid of the memories, Nastya loaded herself with work for 2 weeks. In the evenings, they had dinner with the chef in the restaurant, discussing work moments. Sometimes such a tired woman came to the room that she barely got to bed. She tried to write her feelings down, but still could not help but notice that in the morning she was sick of it. And on the fish, which the chef adored and ordered almost every evening, she She watched with disgust and could not understand how he can eat it every day. Nastya, tomorrow we will return. You have a problem with the customer. He requires to pay the non-stop. Says you did not do well with work. I came up with a problem for myself, and you in a flat place. The kitchen island was a few centimeters closer to the working walls. I didn't like that the sink was not in the very corner. The working table was set to the standard and did not warn that you need to take into account the growth of the customer. I took my spray, Sergey told her, so that she would not worry in any case and did not wind up in advance. The secretary booked us tickets for tomorrow. On Monday, we have a meeting with the client. Don't worry, I won't hurt you. He tried to calm her down again. Nastya went to her room. Weird. During the repair and installation of the furniture, she offered the client an idea, and he almost clapped in his palm and agreed completely. And now he made her guilty by accusing her of ruining everything and doing completely wrong what they agreed on. Although all the changes were made documentarily, the hour is no easier than the hour. It's not a day of complete disappointment. Today she was supposed to go for a walk at her wedding, and instead she was charged with a complaint and accused of what she is not at all guilty of. Nastya went to the bathroom, washed her hands, pulled out a test kit from the box, which she took just in case in the pharmacy. Seeing one strip, she easily breathed. But when the second appeared, she could not hold back her tears. Nastya didn't sleep all night. She was trying to figure out her options, thinking, calculating different options. And she stopped at the fact that she would leave the child and tell Mark about it. She was so exhausted during these 2 weeks that, when she entered their rented apartment early in the morning, she did not immediately realize that she was not alone. There were men's sneakers near the door. Jacket hung in the closet. Things seemed familiar, but Nastya seemed not very decent to look at other people's clothes. The door to Lauren's room was open. In order not to interfere with the friend's personal life, Nastya decided to quietly close it and surprisingly just froze in place. The first thing that caught her eye was Mark, sleeping in a hug with Lauren. It was possible to just turn around and leave. Pretend that she has not yet returned from a business trip, but Nastya, with a stupid smile, could not take her eyes off the sweet couple. Waking up from shock, she shivered and already took a step to leave. But at that moment, as if in slow motion, Mark opened his eyes. Seeing her again closed, in a second opened and realizing that in front of him is not a ghost, but a real Nastya. He could only squeeze out an incomprehensible sound from himself. Nastya, I was wrong again. Sorry. He abruptly dropped Laura off his shoulder, tried to get up, but he failed. The swimming trunks, along with Lauren's underwear, were lying on the edge of the bed. While Mark was thinking of how to get out of this situation, Laura turned to the other side, rolled something incomprehensible, and continued to watch her morning dream. Nastya smiled crookedly, shook her head. Why should I forgive you? We broke up with you. You have the right to do what you want. Don't pay attention to me. I won't bother you. I'll take a quick shower and leave. She turned around sharply and, barely holding herself back from blabbing something offensive to his address, closed herself in the bathroom. Nastya. Mark knocked on the door, but she didn't answer. It was disgusting to look at him. Nastya looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was all curly. What else does she not know about the person for whom she was supposed to marry yesterday? When she found out that she was waiting for Mark's child, she barely held back the rush to not call him. Then she wanted to send a photo of the test and report that in months they would become parents. It's good that she didn't do this. Nastya took a shower. Before leaving the bath, she stood for a few minutes near the door. She didn't want to see Mark or Laura, and she wasn't going to pretend that her behavior deeply affected her. She looked at herself in the mirror again, trying to look strong and independent, and she put a smile on her face and opened the lock. Her wrinkled and still sleepy face was touching like a nervous tick. Apparently, while Nastya was taking a shower, Mark managed to wake her up and, in a nutshell, described the ridiculous situation. She stood in front of Nastya with a guilty face, trying to somehow smooth out her guilt. Yesterday you had to have a wedding. Mark came, brought your things. He was so upset. We decided to drink with grief. Laura bit her lips, kept silent, as if waiting for some inevitable punishment. Hearing the words of her friend, Nastya felt her stomach cramping. Her throat immediately fell into a coma. She suddenly turned around, opened the door, and fell in front of the toilet. She began to turn around, so that it turned out that all the insides would fly out with ruptured masses. When she felt better, she turned on the tap, washed herself with cold water. You probably didn't miss it either yesterday, Laura tried to joke. The boss also came. She turned her gaze to Mark. He stood like a huge rock in the doorway, looked at Nastya and thought about something of his own. We came together. Nastya walked past Mark in her room, closed the door tightly. It's a pity that when you meet a young person, he tries to show himself only on the good side. Nastya was just sure that, having broken up with Igor, fate gave her a meeting with a person who loves her and will do everything possible to make her happy. And it turned out that they are not suitable for each other at all. Thanks to the guardian angel that he saved her from the obvious step again. Only one thing she could not understand. If he did not walk, then why was he in such a hurry for the wedding? Mark seemed to have guarded her when Nastya left the room and threw her away with a confused look. But apparently, to ask the question of where she was going, he did not decide. She had to urgently go to the doctor today, but she called Lori, and especially with Mark, Nastya did not want to. Now he will definitely not find out anything. I didn't want to keep my relationship with this bastard even for the sake of the child. Nastya trembled when her shoulder touched his hand. Wearing a suit, I didn't notice how he felt around. If you run away because of me, then don't hurry. I'm leaving. Looking into her eyes, I said, yes, it is not worth it. And it is not worth making excuses. Mark, everything is fine. We broke up, and this means that each of us has the right to. Apparently, while she was running away from happiness, Mark with a jealous regularity cheated on her, assuming that there was nothing suspicious about it. She is a stupid, naive fool, did not notice anything. Yesterday, she was ready to close her eyes on some things. And today, she clearly realized that this person needs to be held on as far as possible. Stupid. Just a stupid little cretin. Not in vain in love with fools constantly remind that sometimes it is necessary to remove, or at least wipe pink glasses. Nastya was unbearable to be in the apartment. It was necessary to get out of the shower room as soon as possible to, God forbid, not to fall into a twilight and not suffocate from despair. Nastya put on a jacket, somehow laced her sneakers, grabbed her bag, and practically. The doctor smiled politely for weeks in a paid clinic. We will give birth? Without raising his eyes, she asked a duty question without tearing her eyes off the monitor. The unexpected answer was indifferent. Try to walk more, don't worry. Will you be watching us, or in another clinic? Waiting, she looked at Nastya, barely noticeable movements of the eyes, pushing to the answer. Doctor, I will not give birth. You write me the direction to the abortion. If there is such an opportunity, I am ready right today to pass the necessary tests and lie in your clinic. Nastya answered confidently. As soon as Nastya ran out of the house, Mark grabbed his head and stopped from shame and anger at himself. What the hell did he bring here yesterday? First he drank with a friend in a bar, then he did not notice how he felt in the apartment where his unmarried bride lived. Naively hoped that Nastya had already returned from a business trip and was also in a disgusting mood. Laura invited him to the table. They decided to celebrate a sad date, and then he broke up. He just used the one that fell into his hands and almost took the initiative in his hands. Who knew that Nastya would arrive early in the morning and stay with Laura in one bed? Mark, look. Laura pulled out a box for him. Nastya was lying on the table. Seeing in his eyes an unclosed displeasure, she tried to explain. What is it? What did you do in her room? In her room, there is a wardrobe for things. Laura pulled out a test out of the box. I think Nastya is pregnant. She put her hands aside, lowered her eyes, and then looked at him as if they had committed a terrible crime. What do you think? Where did she rush so much? She went on to whisper and asked. I don't know. I'll try to call her. She definitely won't talk to me. Mark squeezed his jaw so hard that the gums came out. Your mother. If Nastya really is expecting a child, the morning picture will definitely not leave him. Mark again grabbed his head. One hope was for her well-being. She does not answer, almost crying, Laura screamed. Mark picked up Nastya's number with trembling hands, but there were only long gulps in the phone. He again picked up her number, and this time he was told that the subscriber was temporarily unavailable. It was already dark outside the window. Nastya turned on her phone. It's good that she turned to the paid clinic. Despite the weekend, the doctor immediately sent her to the laboratory to give tests, and literally 3 hours later she was put in a ward and given the first pill. Of course, it was possible to go home, but Nastya decided to stay in the clinic for a day. She did not want to risk her health. 2 hours later, she took another pill. She tried not to think about the consequences. She had a complete confusion in her head. The heart was bleeding, and the inner voice was constantly reminding me that only scoundrels and moral freaks would constantly stick to her. It's time to grow up and learn how to deal with people. Seeing the phone number on the screen, I was surprised, but still answered. Nastya, I'm worried. Where are you now? Silence was heard in the phone. She doesn't want to talk about the fact that she needs to be alone with her grief. Why burden strangers with problems that don't concern them? They won't hear anyway. They'll just laugh behind her back. Nastya, I found a test. Are you pregnant? Please don't be silent. Mark is very worried. He really wants a child and is ready to take responsibility for himself. Her eyes literally darkened for a few seconds. And then, instead of keeping silent, she decided to pay back the Mark with the same coin. Yes, it was weeks. You can tell Mark that I'm in the hospital now. She came home to tell him about pregnancy, but she saw you together and decided that Mark doesn't need a baby. She had an abortion. Don't wait for me at home today. I'll be in the clinic. Just because I don't want to see you and hear you. Speaking everything that she thought was necessary, Nastya dropped the challenge. Inside, everything crumpled, stretched into a stretched string. Tears rolled on her face. Why did she respond to this challenge? Just upset. Although no, let Mark feel the heaviness of punishment for his disgusting actions on his own skin. Hello, Anastasia. How are you feeling? The boss with business look entered the room. I'm behind you. Where from? Nastya was shocked by the surprise of the eyes, feeling awkward from the fact that since morning she did not even comb her hair. From the Camel, the boss teased her, carefully looking at the pale face. Your girlfriend called me last night in an unchanging state. She started to swear in a tongue that you fell like snow on your head. She came unexpectedly, and now she is to blame for being in the hospital bed. Who asked her? Being still in shock, Nastya answered. Again, convinced that such a friend as Laura is a problem. Get ready. I'll take you away. I'm afraid Larissa will drink again and won't go to work tomorrow. How do you feel? If tomorrow is bad, you can stay at home. I'll try to sort it out with the customer myself. But if it doesn't work, we'll reschedule the meeting. The voice, unbearable with the objection, spoke his own speech. I have nowhere to go. With Larissa and we had a little fight. I don't want to rent an apartment yet. I'll be on a business trip again soon. Nastya squinted her eyes. Sergey Alexandrovich, if it's not difficult, take me to some inexpensive hotel. It's strange, but I thought Larissa was very worried about you. I didn't think you had such a fighting girlfriend. Nastya did not clarify that Laura had talked him into drinking. The boss got his phone, went out into the corridor. I didn't talk to anyone for a long time. Went back into the room. My parents moved to the country house. We will now take your things to them and take them." Nastya shook her head. "No, Sergei Alexandrovich, thank you for your concern, but I will not live in your parents' apartment." "Don't argue," said her boss. "I say, no one lives in the apartment. Moreover, we will go on a business trip soon. And we will come, it will be seen. You rent an apartment, and it's better if you try to make a mortgage." 2 months have passed. Nastya returned from a business trip 2 weeks ago. How she only that day did not resist, but Sergei Alexandrovich still persuaded her to temporarily stay with his parents. On the way, they stopped by her rented apartment for things. Mark tried to talk to Nastya, tried to ask for forgiveness, apparently hoped that she deceived him and the child still left, but his attempts remained unsuccessful. While Nastya was packing her things, and Larissa was drinking her boss tea and apologizing for her night call, Mark still had hope. He followed Nastya around the house and only left when, in an open text, she told him that unlike him, he would never lie, and only a complete idiot can joke about such things. After Nastya left the rented apartment, they didn't talk much with Laura, but they didn't swear. At work, they behaved as if nothing terrible had happened between them, but in order to go somewhere together or talk, no one even said a word. "Nastya, I need to talk to you." Nastya shivered and bowed to her former girlfriend. Laura looked depressed. In her head, the thought flashed that despite the stormy personal life, things on the personal front apparently do not go well. Not in their plate. What was she trying to smile about? But her lips did not listen. Having made 2 deep breaths, Nastya showed the real one standing next to her became a chair. "I don't know where to start." Laura lowered her eyes. Carefully, so as not to smear the mascara, wiped the tears. She sat down on the chair. "Well, come on, the most important thing. I want to confess to you that I have long been in love with Mark. And also I have to say that I was a bad and envious friend." Seeing that Nastya took her words quite calmly, continued, "The day we saw Lyra and Mark at the Turbaz, in short, I brought you there on purpose. Lyra talked to me. For this, she gave me a couple of good projects. And when we went to the pool, I sent Lyra a message. And then you saw it all yourself." Nastya pulled over. "That's not all." Laura coughed. Nastya, shaking hands, pushed the mouse aside, thinking that the conversation would be long, turned off the computer. "I knew you were supposed to come back with the boss that day. I heard the secretary talking on the phone, and I left Marka to sleep on purpose so that you would finally part." She flinched again. "I didn't know you were pregnant with him. If I knew, I would never do that. Why did you call the boss?" "I don't know myself. I wanted Mark to believe that I really worry about you. I don't understand you." "Well, you should have kept silent. Why are you telling me all this now?" "We broke up with Mark. We are no longer connected." Nastya was surprised and shook her shoulders. "Because I'm pregnant. And this is Mark's child. I'm afraid to tell him about it. And most of all, I'm afraid to lose this child." Nastya turned her gaze to Lauren while her belly was still flat. Her face turned red. "I really want you to understand me and forgive me. I repeat that if I only knew that you were waiting for the child from Mark, I would never do this. I can't sleep. I'm afraid that God will punish me for my sins. I've already been to church, confessed. I still can't sleep. So I decided to take revenge on you and tell everything," licked Laura's nose. "Sleep well. Who knows, maybe you help me look at the person from the other side. So don't worry, you can't worry. And consider that I forgave you." It was disgusting, but Nastya decided that she didn't need to know about it. Who knows, maybe for the sake of the child Mark will look after Lori and they will create a strong and happy family. "Thank you, Nastya." Laura squeezed a smile on her face, wiped her nose with a napkin. She got up, fixed her skirt, breathed easily and quickly went out. "Laura, I can't understand one thing. How could Mark sleep so easily with you without protective equipment? It doesn't look like him. He had nothing with him, and I had one. Well, apparently, the term of validity has come to an end, quickly broke, answered the question of Laura and left the office. On Friday evening, Larissa was bold and decided to call Mark. Hello. A female voice was heard in the phone. Laura looked at the screen. No, she was not mistaken with the number. Why are you calling him? Finally, the voice of Lyra was recognized. Immediately, the fighting mood disappeared. Mood went down below the plinthus while she waited for the time for Mark to calm down a little. Apparently, Lyra lost time for nothing. I'll call you once, so I don't need it. Larissa nodded Mark in the shower. There will be more questions. Well, I'll call him later. Larissa called off the call. With anger, I took the phone off, but seeing that Mark had just called her back in a minute, I tried to calm down, take myself in my hands and answer. Mark, we need to talk. Something with Nastya? No, the conversation will not be about Nastya. I have no time today. We were invited to a restaurant with Lyra and friends. I'm busy tomorrow too. Mark immediately lost interest in the conversation, began to come up with reasons on the go. Lyra, without covering the microphone, shouted, "This dress is too short. Put on another one, please. And this one is too bright. Do you want to be the best name girl? Are you together with Lyra again?" "Yes, Lyra brought me some things yesterday." Larissa's face is stretched out. Not only did the news become too unexpected, so Lyra behaved as if they never parted with Mark. And she has the right to behave as if she is his legal wife. Mark, I'm waiting for you, baby. Until he gave up the challenge, she quickly continued. I've been wanting to confess for a long time. I love you. Larissa pressed the red button. I looked at the screen for minutes. I waited. I hoped that Mark would call back, or at least write something. But I didn't wait long. I was buried in a pillow for a long time, cried and didn't notice how I fell asleep. And at night I received a message from Lyra. If you can't get rid of the child, then look at yourself. I warned you. You don't need Mark. We're leaving abroad again soon. The dream was taken away by hand. Larissa read the message again. The inner voice warned that you shouldn't be upset. For the sake of the child, you need to gather, take yourself into your hands and not pay attention. She didn't answer Larry. She just took and sent her message to Mark. It was scary to imagine how Lyra would react to this, but Lori didn't care. She put her hand on her belly. She will have a baby or a little baby. Isn't it a misfortune to give birth to a child from a loved one? Even if Mark doesn't recognize him, he will go to work abroad and won't help her. Well, that's his right. She will just live, raise a baby, and maybe when her son or daughter will grow up, a decent person will come into her life, and she will wait for her womanly happiness. Laura woke up late. She could only fall asleep in the morning. She cooked breakfast, brewed tea, came up to the window, and immediately saw Mark. In her head, with cosmic speed, a thought rumbled that it was necessary to put herself in order in a matter of minutes. She only managed to run up to the mirror, look at herself, pat her hair with her hand, and the doorbell rang. You can come in. Mark was stepping on the staircase like an offended boy. He was walking on his feet and waiting for his fate. Of course, come in. Laura barely held herself back from pressing on his chest. I would give everything for Mark to recognize the baby. The heart desperately knocked and hinted that a lot will depend on today's conversation. Come to the kitchen. Do you want tea? I don't have coffee. Mark silently sat down at the table, clasped his hands to the lock. He didn't know where to start. Larissa thoughtfully rubbed whiskey. Hard to breathe. It was very hard for me when we broke up with Nastya. I will not hide. I still love her, but I understand perfectly that we will not be together anymore. Again, hard to breathe, made a sip of tea. Mark, I love you. We will have a child. Even if you refuse him, I will still give birth. I don't need to be persuaded. Mark covered her hands with his cold palm. He looked as if he had asked for forgiveness in advance. Larissa, you understand that I don't love you. I wanted to stand in a proud pose and drive him away, warn him not to come again, because I perfectly understood what Mark was talking about. And Lyra, then, fell in love again. Of course, where am I going to her? She is your ex. Just tell her that her threat to me means nothing. I'm not afraid of her. What does Lyra have to do with it? And despite the fact that it was me who had to move to you, if you don't love her, then what's the difference between you and who to live with? For the sake of our child, we could try to build a family. Larissa didn't want to impose her conditions. She realized that maybe Mark would be even more angry, but she couldn't stop. If she doesn't tell him everything now, then he will regret it later. Decide for yourself. I give you a month. If you choose Lyra, I will make this decision. Just don't be offended later. I will get married, my husband will adopt my child, and only then try to declare your rights. As if running away from further talks and clearly not wanting to continue developing the topic, Mark silently rose and went to the entrance. Stopped. You still think. It's you think. A normal man would not even think about it, and you are also my daddy. Right, Nastya left you. I guess she guessed right away that she would not cook porridge with you. She does not need a child. In the summer, everything flies in the clouds. Laura pushed him into the corridor and closed the door. As soon as Nastya returned from her business trip, she immediately took up cleaning the apartment. She started to clean the bathroom. She liked to live in 1- and 2-room apartment, of course, but she still wanted to have her own home. In the evening, she was sitting on the internet, studying ads, looking for suitable options, but nothing worked out yet. It was a day off. The time was approaching. Nastya's phone rang. Seeing the boss's number, she was worried. He never called her on the weekend. I was thinking, what if the parents decided to come back? Good afternoon. Do you accept guests? Good afternoon. You have the right to come to the parents' apartment at any time. She responded, getting ready for a long, serious conversation. I'm already here, standing next to the door, but I don't dare to open it with my own key. What if you're not alone? Nastya immediately jumped up and rushed to open it. Come in, Sergey Alexandrovich. I'm sorry, I didn't expect you. If you had warned me in advance, I would have cooked lunch. I began to justify myself. Don't panic. Enough sitting in 4 walls. Get ready. We'll go somewhere for lunch. I smiled and said, while you're getting ready, I'll watch TV. I took the remote control in my hands. Oh, I don't even know. So unexpected. But I know. You've been looking at yourself in the mirror for a long time. You've lost weight. Only your eyes are left. You don't take care of yourself, Anastasia. On the way to work, I was watching you for a while. I'll have to take care of you again. Seeing her grumpy face, I politely added, I miss you. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm not enough communication with you. Sergey Alexandrovich looked at Nastya's surprised face carefully for a minute, then couldn't stand it and laughed. He threw himself on the back of the sofa, threw the remote. What was she thinking about? Nastya almost threw up on his question. She decided to leave her thoughts with herself. Who knows? If she doesn't like it, she will take the answer and fire her. Yes, and Sergey Alexandrovich wanted to come up with a reason not to go, and I warned him that rejections are not accepted. As if reading her thoughts, he did not allow Sergey to finish and demonstratively stood on the screen. The boss, of course, knew the price. I understood that girls like it. What can I say? The whole unmarried half of the women in the office went crazy about him. The male one nervously smoked in the country and envied. He grew 2 meters, touching the soot on his shoulders. Handsome with dark eyes. Smart, and most importantly, not poor. No, I just want to warn you. He again did not let her finish. I got up abruptly, came close. In her mouth, Nastya dried up. Without thinking about the consequences, she slowly licked her lips, and the next second the boss pressed her to herself and licked her lips. The kiss was so unexpected that Nastya did not have time to think of anything, and remembered only when the boss let her go. "Go get ready," he said. "Sorry, I couldn't resist. You were so beautiful." He walked away first to the side, and then turned around and came to the window. Without arguing with him anymore, Nastya opened the closet, took out the first costume she found. The makeup did not stand, smeared her lips with a splash, and, grabbing the bag from the shelf, reported that they could go. Together they went out. The boss took out the keychain from his pocket, pressed the button, opened the passenger door. Thoughts climbed on a merry chair. In automatic mode, they were spinning in their heads and did not give rest. What am I doing? Why did you agree to have lunch with him in the restaurant? What does he want? He will be tired and throw it away, and then she will have to look for another job and get used to the new team again. The boss stopped the car, looked at the anxious Nastya on the face. What are you so pale? What have you come up with there? Come on, tell me. After an unexpected kiss, she felt awkward, did not know where to hide her eyes, and most importantly, how to continue to behave. For the long time that they spent together on a business trip, the boss did not allow anything extra for himself. He never hinted at intim, behaved like a real gentleman. They often had dinner together, but mostly talked about work. Opened the door, helped her go out, and, having taken her hand, took her to a restaurant. Sergei himself did not notice how he was tied to Nastya. He paid attention to her when the customer set the conditions for her to be the one who was doing the project. Then, several times, they went to the object together. When rumors came that she was getting married, he did not bother. He tried to throw this greasy girl out of his head. And when he realized that there would be no wedding, I went on a long trip with her. I watched Nastya from the side and did not notice how I began to think about her a lot. And now she was sitting next to him again. I was shyly looking down, and after his unexpected kiss, I still could not come to myself. Nastya, Sergei took a break. Until I met you, I clearly shared work and personal life. When we returned to the city, I tried to see you less, but, unfortunately, I could not throw you out of my head. Can I take care of you? But I have never considered you like that. Nastya was awkwardly looking at him, but even more awkwardly felt when he took her hands in his. So you consider. Look at me not as your leader, but as a person who you really like. Larissa spent all weekend at home. It's bad that pregnant women cannot be taken to the bedroom. She didn't sleep at night. She looked aimlessly at the ceiling. In front of her eyes, there was a surprised face of Mark, and if she managed to fall asleep for at least half an hour, she woke up from the fact that in her dream, Mark and Valeria laughed and persuaded her to get rid of the child. On Monday morning, she finally left the apartment and headed for the car. At first, she didn't notice anything. From the side of her window, the car was standing whole, and when she came closer, she almost suffocated from indignation. Both wheels were pierced from the passenger side, the side window was broken, and a slag was scratched on the door. For 5 minutes, Larissa just stood and screamed. Here are the bastards. The only real estate. She hasn't even paid the credit for it. The neighbor advised me to call the police. At the same time, I called the police and explained that I would be detained for a certain time. I photographed the car from all sides. Without thinking, I sent the photos to Mark, sending an angry SMS to the police. I'm sure that without you, Valerie, it wouldn't have worked. Get ready. I called the police. You are among the first suspects. Mark immediately called back. Larissa, what happened? And you didn't see anything in the pictures? They decided to bring me to a nervous breakdown, so that I would get into the hospital and lose the child? They spoiled the car for me. Bastards. Well, it's okay. This time it won't go away from you. Lyra will answer for everything for me, and then she will pay for the moral damage. It would be better if he didn't call, because Larissa just couldn't stop. Why do you think this is Lyra at work? We were at my parents' house all day yesterday, and she could not do this. Everything is clear. This goat has brought an alibi. Well, it's okay. The police will figure it out. Or maybe it's really not Lyra. But the inner voice told Larissa that it was not possible without her participation. Who else could have been disturbed by the car besides her? Literally minutes after the conversation with Mark, Lyra called again herself. Listen, beautiful. Don't get me involved in something I have nothing to do with. Wait for the agenda. You will answer me for the slander. There is such an article and criminal. Lyra was screaming something else, but Larissa did not listen to her. Seeing the police car, she marked herself with her hand and challenged. Answering the questions of two young people in uniform, Larissa first expressed her assumptions, without any doubt, that Lyra is the most interested person. And without her participation did not go away. It was embarrassing to admit that two girls did not share a man, but there was nowhere to go. Today she clearly realized that Lyra would not leave her so easily. In order for Larissa not to have anything to do with Mark, she will go to everything. Only before this lady with a chicken mind did not come to the conclusion that Laura and Nastya would never give up on their happiness. And for the sake of the child, ready to fight not only with Lyra, but also with the whole planet. To throw everyone on their way and do everything possible to raise her baby father. Lyra, the face of Mark remained indelible, but the tone in which he pronounced her name said that she would not hear anything good now. She herself understood how stupid it was to declare war on this Larissa. If Larissa's assumptions are justified, and you really will be involved in this ugly story with the car, he continued in a cold tone. His face seemed indescribable, almost harsh, but in the eyes, a slight distrust through half with confusion. This still needs to be proved. First, I have an iron alibi. Secondly, the car is on loan. There is insurance. All the expenses are compensated by the insurance company. I waved my hand, not wanting to go back to this topic. So it's still you. And I, like a fool, was still trying to justify you. Mark scratched his hair. Lyra was surprised to look at him and smiled crookedly. What did you want? You thought I would continue to live with you and rejoice that this shit is under the heart of your child? Tears flowed down my cheeks. Lyra opened her mouth to continue, but in the last second thought over. She turned around, poked her nose, and began to slowly blow up. I can give you a child myself. Why do we need children? It is not clear from whom. Only slaps and reproaches from such children. Until this scum gets rid of the child, I will not leave her alone. A pause was hung in the room. Mark just silently shook his head and seemed to refuse to take what was said. The mature, self-sufficient girl went down to the offended hooligans who do not know the boundaries in their insolence. Well, why are you silent? Also say that you are ready to leave me again for the sake of the child and go to her. I'm not used to it. Once you already left me for the sake of your Nastya, who, at the first difficulty, ran away from you. Lyra came closer to Mark, stumbled into his chest, capriciously knocked on the shoulder with a fist. I don't know what I found. Well, I just don't want to share you with anyone else. She raised her crying face with tears running down her cheeks. Let's get married. If Larissa finds out that you made me an offer, then maybe she will think with her own brains and take the only right decision. You said yourself that you don't need this child. You went crazy. Completely went crazy. Look at yourself. She's getting married. Good bride. In the mouth, the gums are dripping with poison. In the head, instead of the brain, a mold. I had the best opinion about you. That's it. Enough. You got me. I think we were in a hurry. We shouldn't have started living together again. I hope you understood me correctly. Try to make sure that by the evening my apartment is not you or your things. Mark's voice sounded like thunder in the clear sky and immediately brought Valerie out of the grip. What? Because of some fucking small little girl? Are you ready to break up with me again? If it's so important to you, I'm ready to deal with Larissa myself. To shut her mouth with a certain amount and forget about her forever. Let her do whatever she wants. as long as she doesn't touch us and doesn't blackmail you with her pregnancy. Lyra squeezed her lips and turned away, showing everyone that her conversation is unpleasant. Small little girl has nothing to do with it. It's your business and your disgusting actions. That don't fit in my head at all. Moreover, I have someone to compare with. Nastya would never have come down to this. Let's make a deal. No scandals, no reproaches. You collect things, and this time we are going to part forever. I want to be sure in my woman, trust her, and not think about what surprise she will bring me next time. Mark looked at the clock again. So what do you think about me? Well, thank you. I hope you're doing the right thing. Lyra whispered through her teeth. How much can she be humiliated in front of him, and he's not? She ran into the dressing room, grabbed her suitcase, began to throw everything that fell under her hand into it. You'll give the keys to the concierge. Watching her calmly, he spoke. She didn't answer anything. After a second, she looked at him with such anger that Mark regretted again that he had taken her away from his. He opened the door and, in order not to interfere with Lyria's packing, left the apartment. Nastya tried to smile, to support the conversation, but she was worried, because the chef decided to transfer their friendly relationship to another level. Having paid for lunch, they left the restaurant, got into the car. Maybe we should go to the cinema? How do you watch this? Nastya turned her head, looked at his unwavering face. I need to go home. His dark eyes bored right through her. Nastya noticed that he was very surprised, but did not show the views. Don't you want to go to the cinema? Then I have another proposal. Instead of going straight, the boss turned right at the intersection. Where are we going? Nastya was already prepared to express her dissatisfaction and explain that that was enough for today. To my home. Look how I live. Take me home. I'm not going to you. Sergei Alexandrovich, let's not rush the event. Pushing his lips and straightening his chin, Nastya panicked. The boss's face has a cunning smile. Don't worry, you're just whack to check your reaction. I have been helping one shelter for homeless animals for a long time. If you don't mind, we'll go to the store, buy everything we need and visit our smaller brothers. Agree? Or do you still want to go home? Sergei went to the side of the road, looked at Nastya and heard, of course, agree. Well, I was sure you would agree. And next time you will ask yourself, hello, Sergei Alexandrovich. Marka decisively went to the boss's office, arranged for the proposed chair. Decided to do a repair in the parents' apartment. There will be to demolish the fence, to plan. There will be a lot of work. But I have one condition. I want Anastasia to be in design. Mark thought that the boss was ready to make him look bad. Especially stressed when he heard Nastya's name. Mark was long set up for this step. Somehow persuaded his parents to do a repair. It remains to put the conditions to the boss. If he orders her to do this project, they will often meet. There will be an opportunity to be with her again, with the one for which he has long lost peace. Anastasia will not be able to do your project. She has a lot of work. We have a lot of other wonderful designers besides Anastasia. I'm sure they will cope with the task set. No worse than that. Mark was surprised to see Sergei. He was told that the boss started taking care of Nastya, but he tried not to give them much importance. And now I clearly understand that the rumors are not groundless, and there is really something between them. The boss will better refuse the client, but Nastya will not give his project. You misunderstood me. I only trust Anastasia, and it is very important to me that she is the one who does the work. You probably know that we have been dating for a long time, almost got married. Nastya knows my parents well. We can always make a deal with her and find the right solution. Therefore, I repeat, Nastya should be the only one involved in my project. In this case, you will have to postpone the renovation for months, said Sergei. I thought we could make a deal with you. Once you have already helped me. Working with Anastasia was a pleasure. We got so attached to each other that soon we began to live together. Almost got married, Mark repeated. I feel sorry for you, but I want to warn you that now I take care of your ex-wife, and I really don't like that strangers stick to her. I'm, you know, a terrible owner. I know that this line does not paint me, but I can't do anything with myself. Your project will not be done by Anastasia. You know, such a saying about the train that left, and you didn't even have time to jump into the last car. Mark coughed at his words. Sergei barely held back so as not to crack his cheeks and send him where he came from. And no one asks you. I wanted to sneeze at what you don't like. I don't like that you're spinning next to Nastya either. And I would be much calmer if you left her and moved to another greasy employee. Mark valiantly went to the exit. The plan fell apart in front of his eyes, like a sand castle. Chances were stumbling. And no matter how much Mark was upset, he understood that Sergei was right. And his train really left. All the best. If you suddenly decide to have another designer do your project, he smiled at her and said, and only when the door behind Mark closed, he let himself say a couple of swear words. Mark walked down the corridor. The words of the boss were constantly spinning in his head. After breaking up with Lyra, he clearly realized that he still had to try to get Nastya back. Actually, why did they run away? Because of the desert? Is it really not clear that they set him up? They played everything like they were playing by the notes and made Nastya believe. There was a mistake with Larissa, but who can boast of an ideal clean biography nowadays? Only after talking to the boss, I realized that the hope disappeared instantly, not having been born. Mark, hello. What are your fates? Seeing Larissa, Mark was even more upset. Only her complete set was missing. No, to meet Nastya. Well, no. Be sure to get the one that you would never see. Hi, I want to make a renovation in the apartment for my parents. By the way, did you take the car from the renovation? Translated the conversation. I took it. Yesterday, the insurance company has already listed the money. Lyra apologized and also threw it away for moral damage. I did not refuse. I will soon be on a maternity leave. Money will not interfere. I'll find a place to adjust them. Without breaking Mark's gaze, I put my hand on my still flat belly. Let me take care of your project. I have little work right now. If you want, I can go to my parents' apartment right now. I wanted to add that I still have to get acquainted, but I kept silent. Mark clenched his teeth, trying not to show his appearance that he does not need her services. It was hard for him to breathe and shake his head. Don't forget the head. It's hard to find common language with my parents. And in your position, it's better not to tremble with nerves and not to take up the project for it. My parents are hard to please. Larissa bit her lip, looked around, convinced that there was no one around, made an offended face and capriciously said, Mark, I wanted to ask you, I will soon need to do the first screening? He allows you to identify possible risks and complications if they exist. Larissa spat 3 times through the left shoulder. I hope our baby will not find out anything. Perhaps even soon they will be able to determine the gender of the child. I tried to read Mark's mood from his face, looking into Mark's eyes. You could not go to the clinic with me. One thing is a little scary. Usually everyone goes to this procedure with husbands. With a hunger in the throat, Mark barely held back. In his thoughts, the word. But she said completely different words. If I'm not busy on this day. Larissa sighed easily, barely smiling. Okay, I'll definitely let you know in advance. I hope you won't leave us and the baby at such a responsible moment. The heart of the Golka was knocking. Actually, a trifling matter. With a girl who is presumably waiting for her child to leave for the ultrasound. However, Mark still doubted that he has a direct relationship with Lauren's baby. But before that, he didn't want to prove anything to anyone. When the baby is born, he will do a test. If the analysis is confirmed, it will help him. That's all. In order to tie himself to a marriage with an unloved woman, he was not going to. Mark, you thought about how we would live on. The child needs a father. Remember, I gave you a month to make up your mind. As I understand, You finally broke up with Lyra. Nastya again pulled out a lucky lottery ticket, switched to the boss. The whole female half of the office envies her. Larissa approached Mark almost tightly. He wanted to push her away. She suddenly got sick of the smell of her perfume. It was a shame that because of these two bitches, he lost a girl for which he was ready to roll mountains. You shouldn't have hoped for me. After breaking up with Nastya, and then with Lyra, I learned one simple truth. I can't live without love. I want to love and be loved. If Nastya doesn't forgive me, I will look for that one and unique one again. And if I find it, I will try not to lose it again. 2.5 years have passed. The closest people gathered on the first birthday of the son. Sergei's parents, his cousin with his family, could not miss such an important event. Nastya's mother, although she lived in another city, took a vacation at work and came to congratulate her only grandson. Sergei, with a proud look, greeted guests, received congratulations with his son. A joyful smile all evening did not go away from his face. Dad was heartbroken in the sun, and assured that it was impossible, just waved and with love watched how Nikita made his still uncertain steps, chanted words, and showed how much he loves his mother and father. Nastya still could not resist for a long time. Sergei looked after her so beautifully, surrounded her with care, did not leave a single chance not to fall in love with him. However, she was a little careful, looked around, and then waved her hand and plunged into the boiling whirlpool of passions. About 3 months after their dizzying novel, Sergei made her an offer of a hand and a heart. While preparing for the wedding, Nastya waited every day for the future husband to trick her. For some reason, it seemed to her that something bad was bound to happen and the celebration would not take place again. But this time, everything went without a knock and a bang. At the white limo, Sergei brought Nastya to the registry office, and only when she saw a wedding ring on her ring finger, she was finally able to believe that she had become a legal wife. Sergei brought Nastya a phone, called Larissa, congratulated her on her son's birthday. After Nastya caught her in bed with Mark, their friendship came to an end. But sitting in a detention, Larissa apparently lacked communication. She periodically called, sometimes asked for advice, often pressed for pity, constantly complained about the brand that she lived in her own pleasure, changed girls, brought them to restaurants, bought gifts, and the son paid for miserable food. As soon as she tried to prove in court that his salary was much more, she could not achieve anything. Mark himself did not appear at any court hearing. Instead of him went a lawyer who knew his business well. She tried to reach out to his parents, but they took the side of her son. What did he tell them about her? But the grandmother and grandfather immediately said that Larissa did not go to them and did not humiliate the neighbors. She decided to give birth to herself, so she must count on her strength. All the conversations ended with her words that if she knew that Mark was such an egoist, she would never contact him. Walking in the park with the child, Nastya met Igor. Seeing her with a wheelchair, he was very happy, came up, congratulated his son on his birth, poured compliments on her, said that, having become a mother, she began to look even better. After they divorced, she started to build a stake in his job. She smiled at him, but she was offended by him behind his back. She was thinking of everything in order to set up a team against him. Working in such conditions was unbearable. She had to write a statement and leave her own way. She lived alone for a long time, then met a girl, and they began to live together. And when I got to know her, it turned out that she was in a divorce and she had 2 children. At first, he seemed to have calmed down, and then it turned out that it was very difficult to raise strangers. I didn't look at it that way. I didn't say it. Igor was quickly tired of all this. They decided to break up. Masha, of course, was against it. She began to say that she would send her children to her mother again, that they would not disturb him anymore. But Igor did not agree to her terms. Before leaving him, the girl broke all the dishes in the apartment, cut the curtains with scissors, Children cut huge holes on the doorsill, took the money he was putting aside for a joint vacation. Now he is in no hurry to start new relationships. From Larissa, Nastya learned that Larry had returned to Boomerang. After they finally broke up with Mark, she disappeared in nightclubs. I met a guy there. He put her on illegal drugs. I was not afraid to get behind the wheel in a state of drunkenness. Coming home in the morning, I fell asleep behind the wheel and became a victim of a traffic accident. The guy is fine, but she hurt her leg badly. The gangrene began. I had to amputate to the knee. Now he does not drink, does not smoke. He leads a healthy lifestyle. After the guests left, and Nastya's mother, having washed the dishes, fell asleep, Sergei was still driving with Nikita. Having jumped with the guests, it was impossible to calm down his son. He fell asleep closer to. Thank God the holiday is over. I'm tired. Sergei fell asleep, closed his eyes. It was necessary to celebrate in the cafe. Sergei, I have a gift for you. Nastya, come on tomorrow. I don't want anything today. Don't be offended, he whispered in the half-dream. Sure that Nastya once again decided to surprise him with beautiful underwear. Sergei, how do you see that we will soon have another baby? Nastya just needed to make her husband famous today. I don't understand. Sergei opened his eyes. I've been sick of it for several days now. Just in case, yesterday I bought a test, and here it is. She stretched out a piece of paper to him. On a small screen, the inscription was visible. Pregnant. 2 or 3 weeks. Well, super. We have a boy. Now you will give birth to a son or a sister. And if there will be a boy again? Nastya was surprised to see her husband. So let's go get the third child. And if there is a boy again? The husband did not drink much this evening, but it is clear that the alcohol still hit the head. Then we will raise 3 sons, smiling at her question, asking Nastya to kiss them.